Beautiful. All right. Well, we got us another episode of Tac'd with Spencer P. And today I got Tatiana and Monique with me here. I'll let them explain who they are, but they come to us from Decriminalize Nature Seattle, and I think we got a heck of a show ahead of us. So I'll let you guys take the floor if you want to just explain to the people who you are, where you come from, and who you represent, what got you to where you're at now.
All right. Well, I'll start. So my name's Tatiana Quintana, and I currently live in Seattle. I've been in Washington State for a little over 3 years, I think it is. And I am co-director of Decriminalize Nature Seattle. And I've been in that role since, I want to say, April of this year. But I've been a volunteer for about a year and a half.
Awesome.
With Decriminalize Nature Seattle. Yeah.
Yeah, hi, my name is Monique, and I'm co-chair of Education and Outreach of DNS. I've been living in Washington since about 2012, August 2012. Yeah, and I think I've been on the board just as long as you have with the new transition, so since April. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So, yeah.
Awesome. What do you guys do at DNS?
A little bit of everything, for sure. I help to govern the organization. I do a lot with strategizing for policy and whatnot. I help lead events. I write documents. I wear a lot of hats.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And just for the people, what exactly is Decriminalize Nature advocating for?
Yeah. So, in a nutshell, we're advocating for the equitable access for all Washington residents to psychedelics, and the model that we align the most with is kind of called gather, gift, and grow, right? Mm-hmm. So you can sustainably gather psychedelics from nature.
Yep.
You can cultivate them or grow them at home, which is one of the biggest components of making them accessible and equitably accessible is if you can have that relationship with nature or a natural plant or fungus, and grow it at home. You can grow your own medicine.
Right.
And then gifting, right? So being able to share that responsibly with other adults.
Right. So no sales, but you can gift it to someone.
Yeah, we see this kind of like a first phase.
Yep.
Because,
intro.
Yeah, an intro.
Yeah.
You got to do things slowly for people to accept it.
Yeah, of course.
Mm-hmm.
Have you guys ever had any experience growing mushrooms at home? Have you guys ever seen any videos of people doing that? That is an interesting hobby.
Yeah.
Well, I haven't grown. My medicine of choice is ayahuasca, and so I have, helped in making that. And
interesting.
Yeah,
I was gonna save those kind of questions for the end of the podcast, but
that's my introduction to psychedelics, and psychedelic healing has been through ayahuasca, and that has led me to the world of plant medicines, and so through that relationship with ayahuasca, I've come to know the healing powers and of plant medicine and nature in general.
Right. That's interesting. Ayahuasca is not usually the first psychedelic most people take.
I know.
In fact, actually, I was telling one of my coworkers today. I was like, "Yeah, I'm having these ladies on, and they helped advocate for that up there in Seattle to help get it decriminalized." And I was like, "Have you ever done shrooms?" And he's like, "No, I never did any psychedelic." Well, actually, I smoked peyote one time, and I'm like, "Okay, dude, that's a jump.
Yeah.
That's a step in the right direction." I'm like. He's like, yeah, my cousin, he lived in Arizona, and he was like, I guess it took over his life for a year or two, and he's like, this is a very special thing, I'd like you to come check it out, and it's Arizona, so I have to imagine it was the real deal, and they had a whole TP set up, and yeah, he said he got boxed out and had to jump out halfway through, but he went for a ride, he said, but no shrooms. Cool, so what does it look like to actually legally advocate for something like this? The political world, it does interest me. Mm-hmm. A lot of stuff disinterests me, mm-hmm. but I do get interested by some of the technical stuff and what got you interested in doing that kind of work?
Well, for myself, I kind of got roped into it by a friend of mine who now lives in Uganda.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
She roped you in and bailed out?
No, not really. I say that jokingly. She didn't bail. She's a homeopath, so she goes back to Uganda. When she visits, she always goes back.
Okay.
Right, so she lives there. She's not from there, but she lives there, and she's starting, hopefully, her own,
retreat.
A retreat, yeah, her own retreat. So she's like building houses and all kinds of cool stuff. But she basically invited me. So my friend Nicole had invited me multiple times, and I was like, I don't know. This was before the pandemic, so still had the commute, still had all the other responsibilities. And then the pandemic came, and I had all this free time. And so then my friend...
So you went out to Uganda?
No, I didn't go to Uganda yet. I wish.
Sorry, I'm getting excited.
No, it's all good. But my friend who was still in Seattle, my other friend Michelle, she said, hey, you should come check this out. It sounds like something you'd be into. And I was like, yeah, I've heard of it. Okay, I'll come this time. So this time I actually came to a meeting, and I met some cool people there. And I had the time and the interest. And so I just kind of started volunteering.
So you were laid off from work or something like that, or it just wasn't...
No, the commute. I didn't have to spend time going. Gotcha. You know, so like when I got home, there wasn't any. I was already home. Yeah.
Awesome.
So I had extra time.
Sweet. And how about you?
Well, I'm a part of a ayahuasca church.
Okay.
And so the landscape is predominantly white-bodied people.
Okay.
And I know how, the war on drugs have dramatically affected communities of color.
Correct.
And so when I'm in ceremony, I know how much it's benefited my life and helping me heal through my trauma, and how that has affected my children. My relationships to my children, and it's just been a prayer of mine to kind of like open it up for all people to have access to it. You know? And so when a friend of mine told me about what DNS is doing, I was curious about it, because it was like, okay, this is kind of like a step in a direction towards working that prayer.
Right. So you were saying there's like an access issue. Is it more of an information issue?
It's
or
both.
What are some of those issues that make that, that help close the gap?
Just the whole propaganda on the war on drugs, how that has influenced and affected the people of color and community. And
I think we can all agree it's time to bring that war to an end.
Right.
I think we lost that one
War's
miserably.
never benefited anybody but a few people,
Yeah, exactly. I was just going to say a couple people won.
Yeah, never the people.
Not us. No.
Yeah. So,
well, it was designed to do what it was designed to do. It did well.
Exactly.
Yeah. Right.
It was systematic.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yep. Disrupting, the black family primarily, and then people of color, and then it just, because it became an institutionalized, right? Then it just started catching all kinds of people in that net of criminalization. So
that's how it is when you try to do harm to one. It can't isolate it to one. You harm everybody.
Right.
So yeah, so that's kind of like led me to kind of like do this work, just so that people can have access if they choose to do so. And now it's just more so like educating people through just sharing my story and my experience, because it's a whole different, world, ceremony life, being in community and doing ceremony and things like that in nature and stuff. So it's just something that, could benefit a lot of people who feel called to do that type of work.
If you're comfortable sharing your story, I would love to hear it. I've never personally spoke with anyone who's done ayahuasca, so I would love to hear your experience if you're open to sharing it. But I know I was just having this conversation earlier too. I know it can be kind of hard to put into words what a psychedelic experience is. It's kind of like trying to explain to someone what a concert was like. You kind of just had to be there. So I do understand if it's a little difficult.
Well, I could tell you what my first experience was like.
Maybe put it in perspective for someone who, for your first time, or someone who doesn't have experience with psychedelics, who's maybe a little bit curious. What would be some of the pros? And...
I had I mean, like none. Like,
let it rip.
No experience whatsoever, because when I lived in Arizona, I went to film school, right? And So one of my film buddies, I wanted to do a documentary because I was interested in doing a spirit quest, like doing peyote, because they have churches down there, and that didn't pan out. And
should have called my buddy.
I know, right? And so I was reading about ayahuasca, and because for me it was just like I felt like there was something that I need to work on, but it was outside of my periphery.
Yep.
Like my own internal personal growth, you know, and so that was my intention, and also I didn't want to be in a container. It had to be intentional. It had to be for healing, because I wasn't a cosmonaut. I wasn't doing it for entertainment.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
I was doing it for my own self-liberation. I just didn't quite fully understood what it was.
It wasn't a tool you had ever thought of
No,
using?
but I was researching it, and then when you start researching it, the algorithms, you just get more information.
Yeah, get more info.
Even if it's a bad decision, you know.
No, I'm like reading about it. I'm like, okay. So long story short, I bumped into this guy on the beach. His name's Nick Mohan, and I told him, we just, you know how you meet people and you just instantly become friends,
some people's got that.
And I just told him about, film school, I was going to do this thing here, and I want to do ayahuasca, but there's no way I'll be able to do that. Passport, go to Peru, all this other stuff, there's just no way. And besides, it's just like, the level of safety and trust, because you don't know.
It's a mission.
It's like so many factors. And he was like, you know what? I think I can help you out with that. And so he hooked me up with this church in Bremerton, Washington, called Divinas Aguas. It's with the Santo Daime. And I went to my first work, and I had like the people were just really sweet and nice. And I saw images of myself, because images of like the Orishas, like Yemanja and Oshun. And then there was this guy, they had a picture there, this black guy. And I was like, and there's just all these white people there, and I was just like, well, they must be kind of cool. They got that black dude right there, and and then I see all these different images that look like me, So it put me at ease, and besides, everybody was really sweet and kind, and so this was my experience. So
that was them like paying their respects to the homeland, or
well, the Santo Daime was the founder of the Santo Daime was a 7-foot tall black guy.
Okay.
In Brazil, he was a rubber tapper in Brazil. And
is that who the picture was of?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
And and so he's the one who bought the ayahuasca from the indigenous people out of the forest, out of the Amazon. And him and a few people developed these works and these ceremonies, and their sacrament is ayahuasca. And so, and they offer it, people who feel called. There's no proselytizing. You have to kind of like intuitively find it. Right. You know what I mean? They're not going to come knocking on your door,
You might get someone in the door, but that place might not be for everybody.
Right. You have to be a seeker.
You have to find your way there.
Yeah, you have to be a seeker. Makes sense. And so, and because he was a healer, because they're way out in the forest, and they don't have medical facilities and stuff, so they use this medicine to help heal the people there, and they created a community. And so anyway, that's where it originated from, long story short. But I don't know, but I don't know how much you want me to go into my experience.
Hey, we got all the time in the world. That's what we're here for. That's the beauty of the podcast. It's not just quick little clips. We're here to get to know you, know your story, however much you feel comfortable sharing.
All right,
it's the internet. We can go crazy.
Okay. So, all right. So, first of all, everybody was singing. you know.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah, and they had the guitar and they had the drums, you know, and I was just like,
ooh, this sounds cool.
it was good. It was good, you know. And so there's spaces to lay down. So I laid down and I had this image pop up. I was in this blue scape and I noticed there was a kite, right? Mm-hmm. And I started looking up and I was like, oh, wow, it's a kite. Mm-hmm. And then my perception went beyond the kite. And then I noticed, like, where did the kite go? You know? Then I'm like, wait a minute. And then my perception went down underneath the kite. And then I'm like, okay, there was a string. So I followed this string. And it led me to this wadded up twine, like a mess. And I'm like, oh, wow, look at that. And then I'm like, what's in there? And then it was just like all these thoughts, all these beliefs. It's just like got kind of like tangled into that. Then I'm like, okay, wait a minute. I want to go back to looking at the kite, right? So what I learned from that is really simple. It's just like where you put your attention, that's where you go.
Right.
Because I got so entangled in it. My thoughts were like winding me down in all this fear and all these things.
And this was your first time doing
This is my first
okay.
time. It was like almost like my first lesson, I guess.
Super interesting.
Yeah, because it's just like the way that we perceive what I've learned and come to know is how we perceive a thing. We get further. We create more of it.
Right.
You know, if we can maintain a place of centeredness, a place of calm, we can look at the whole thing. And how that lesson, how that helped me with relating to my kids is just like sometimes, you know, being a mom and getting tangled up in my kids' stuff, you kind of lose sight that that's a person, that's my son. You know what I mean? And so the lesson that I learned in the work helped me to pull back so I could see the whole person, not just what they did or just that little portion, you know. So that's kind of like it's really good. And
that's interesting. So I the place that I hear the most about ayahuasca from, funny enough, is actually from like veteran podcasts. It's really big in the veteran community right now. It helps with PTSD and whatnot.
Yeah, it does.
And so I was just listening to an episode not too long ago, and this guy had gone down to, you know, some place down in South America on a retreat, and he was being guided through with his shaman, you know, kind of the same deal. And just like, and I don't know you at all, so if you mind, I might interpret just from my point of view. But like, he was talking about how the shaman was guiding him, and he said, you know, you're gonna come to a point where you can go like good or dark, right? And for what he's there for, he's saying, you know, you need to go to the dark. And so like when I hear you say you got the kite, it's a nice bright blue sky, and then you follow the twine into this big tangled mess. It's like the good or bad, right? And so if you were there for, you know, if you were on the same mission he was, like, I would interpret that like, you know, we got to unravel this. I don't know what mess is in there, but we got to unravel it and check it out. And it's just, you know, kind of an interesting psychology behind the whole thing. I find that super interesting. Well, thank you for sharing that. That's super cool. That's super cool. Have you had any experiences or?
Yeah.
Oh, awesome. Lay it on us.
Yeah, sure. So my first experience.
I was there.
Oh, nice.
Well, that's ayahuasca, not my first psychedelic experience.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah, she was there for ayahuasca, but for my first psychedelic experience, it was a few years ago. I think going on 4 years ago. I was dealing with a pretty bad depression. I had put all my eggs in one basket, so to speak, with like, what am I gonna do? I'm turning 30, like, well, you know, all of that stuff going on in your mind, and things didn't pan out for me the way that I thought they would, and I felt like the opportunity. I felt like this one job that I had an opportunity in. So maybe I should give some background. I used to be an outdoor educator, so I used to lead 20-day expeditions with teenagers, mostly in like between New York, Connecticut, Massachusetts, like that, like
Up in the
where the
mountains?
the Appalachian Trail.
Whoa.
And so it was like a program
That's
that was
gnarly.
Yeah, it's really cool. It's a program run by the state.
That's cool. Okay, sweet.
And it's based on the Outward Bound philosophy. So it's a journey experience. So kids would start off with a backpacking trip, and then they do canoeing, rock climbing, etc.
Awesome.
And so I worked there for a number of years, and I was an expedition instructor, and then I became a course director, which means that I basically was like a mentor and helped to facilitate the instructors when they were out in the field. And so they'd call, 1 or 2 in the morning, oh my God, these kids are going crazy, I need help.
And these are mostly city kids too,
Oh,
I
yeah,
would imagine.
yeah.
Nice.
Mostly city kids. They would take kids from all over the state, but most kids would come by referral from either a social worker or a coach or a caring person in their life.
Okay.
Would find out about this program, and it's completely free for people who can't afford it, and then for families who can, they pay a small amount.
Awesome. Is that a program still around?
Yeah, it's still around, and
shout 'em out.
luckily they're still going strong despite everything that's happened with the pandemic.
Man, this is the perfect time to get out and about.
What do you mean?
Just it.
Oh, like after
Yeah.
all of this,
Yeah,
like
yeah, yeah,
isolation,
yeah.
Get out of the city, get out in the nature.
Yeah,
You know,
it's just with-
reconnect with Mother Nature, man. It
Yeah,
has been,
it's important. It's really
definitely.
important. And connection is so
Yeah.
important. And being in connection and being in relationship and having the devices facilitating that for people. It's really I've noticed sometimes where I'll pull out my phone. I'm in a social setting and I pull out my phone because I'm nervous, and I'm like, I'm gonna get a hit of dopamine scrolling on
Right.
Instagram or something, make me feel better, But anyway, so I was doing that job. I became a course director, and that's kind of it was also a seasonal position. Even though I was working for the state, it's a seasonal position. So I wasn't able to get a full-time position because things didn't play out. And so when I got that news, because I had applied for the open position, and it's like really rare that there's an opening. When I got the news that I wouldn't even be able to interview for it because the state has like this entitlement-based program, basically, where if you get laid off, let's say you work for the state and you get laid off, you can put your name on a list, and then if HR determines that you're qualified for a job, you basically get that
That's
job.
like almost nepotism without any relation
Right.
or something
Yeah.
like that.
The only other competition you would have is like, let's say Monique also worked for the state and you both wanted the same job.
But
then
she
you'd
worked
have
for
to,
the state longer or something, yeah.
or you'd both interview and
Yeah,
they'd figure it out.
of
But
course.
I didn't get to apply for that.
Bureaucracies.
Yeah, it sucks. And so I didn't get to apply for that job, and I was really, really depressed after that and like crushed by anxiety because I had no idea what I was going to do next. And I knew that I was kind of at the end of my ability to keep doing the same job I was doing.
Gotcha. So you were at a fork in the road.
Yeah, a huge
Okay.
one. And I didn't know what I was going to do. So,
That's a good setup.
yeah, a good setup for a lot of self-reflection. But it came about a year later because after that happened, I think it was about a year later, yeah. After that happened, I was like depressed. And then I started to come out of it. I worked one more summer at this place. But it was still heavy. Like I couldn't really even do my job that well because like the anxiety was crippling. I couldn't speak. I couldn't like be in front of people. It was something that, I'm nervous now, but like I've never experienced it to that level.
Like true anxiety.
Like that. Yeah. And I think I was good at avoiding it.
Gotcha.
I was good at avoiding these kinds of situations that would trigger me. So I got through that summer. And then I remember a friend of mine told me, it's like, hey, I have some mushrooms if you want to try it, and this was like in June. So 2 months later, he actually gives me some of this mushroom, and it was actually psilocybin, like powder.
Oh, okay.
So he dosed it out for me, and he was like, here, I'm giving you a low dose. It's definitely going to be a trip, but who knows, right?
Right.
Like everyone's different. And he gave me a big write-up, and he, kind of did a little bit of setting for me.
Okay, sweet. He didn't completely just throw you to the wolves.
No, he didn't. No.
That's a good friend.
He was, he's a good friend. He's a very good friend, and he was very. He almost didn't do it because he was like, giving someone this experience is a big. It's kind of a big responsibility.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
It is.
So he definitely sat with it for a while. And so I did my own research as well of like what can I expect, things like that. But I can say hands down, my life changed after that experience.
Was that like your first any sort of like brain altering chemical?
Yeah,
or-
when I was in college, I tried
alcohol.
cannabis a little bit. Yeah, alcohol, but it wasn't like that.
Nothing. Even okay.
Yeah.
Perfect. Sweet.
Yeah.
So how was it? How'd it go for you?
It was amazing. I had no idea what to expect, but for me, what happened was I had a really good friend of mine take me for a hike, and we were alone in the woods in Connecticut. And I remember when I took it, it was like a small capsule, and I took it with a glass of tea, and I said, all right, if this does nothing, that's okay. I'm okay with that. I'm going to accept whatever happens today. And I remember I first started to notice that things were different when I was walking through the woods. And I remember, you know how sometimes the light comes through the trees?
Yep.
And it started to glitter. They looked like glitter. And I was like, oh, wow, something's going on. And I remember telling my friend, Jamie, I was like, Jamie, something's happening. And she's like, great, look at all these mushrooms. It was spring or fall in Connecticut, and it was a really rainy fall. So there were all these really beautiful mushrooms.
Awesome.
Cool.
And so, it's like the leaves are still on the tree because autumn hasn't quite started yet. But there's all these beautiful, like, red and orange and purple coral fungi and all kinds of cool stuff going on. And I'm starting to trip. And so I look at her, I'm looking at the ground, and I look up at her, and she just looks like huge. She looks like a giant. And I was like, oh boy, I think it's happening. It's kicking in. And then after this part, I don't remember
Famous
a whole
last
lot.
Words. I think it worked.
I don't remember a whole lot after this point because from there, I was just on a wild ride. I remember telling her I felt like light as air. I felt it almost felt like I didn't feel my body anymore. So I felt connected and also not connected to my body. I can't explain it. It's hard to explain.
Right.
But I also remember that I was walking really funny because I thought I was floating. So I was just like, it took me like 4 hours to walk a mile because I was just like walking really strangely. But she was super patient. But there was one moment I remember where I was in front of her and I was walking, and I turned around and I looked at her, and she, I looked like, I thought I could see every vein and capillary under her skin. And that was really freaky. So that kind of freaked me out a little bit. And I was like, okay, I can't look at you anymore. I'm just gonna not look at you anymore. I'm just gonna focus, I'm gonna pretend like she's not there.
Right.
And so she gave me some space. And when she left, she didn't leave me, but she gave me some distance. That's when the experience really started to go inward.
Okay.
And it wasn't about like, oh, how cool things look. It was more like the emotional experience.
Right.
And I remember reconnecting with like my inner child is what it felt like. I felt like I was 5 years old again. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was really
I can relate
amazing.
to that.
Yeah. It was like these. I felt a depth of emotion during and after that experience that I had not felt in I don't know how long.
Right. It feels like all your responsibilities are lifted, and yeah.
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 It's pretty awesome. And I started to lose sense of who I was and all of those kinds of things. But I remember connecting with emotion on a really deep level. And so, there were other really trippy things. Like at one point she looked like a jelly bean. It was wild. It was like, it was a really great experience. And then at the peak of the experience, I remember I had to sit down because all of my vision was just enveloped by sacred geometry.
Oh, okay.
And it was like these goddess women holding a mushroom. Like
within the geometry?
Yeah, and they were just like holding the
cool.
mushroom, just like lifting the mushroom up to the sun. And so I kind of just sat with that for a moment, and then as I started to come back, back to earth, back into my body, I remember thinking to myself, like, I have truly experienced what it feels like to be fully embodied.
Right.
Yeah, to a level that I don't think I think I had muted myself in order to survive, like the trauma that I had been through when I was a kid. And that just, you learn these protections and you keep them with you.
Right.
And they're really hard to undo because they protected you then. And then you just live with it.
Right.
Yeah, you learn, that's what kept you safe. So you keep going.
And you feel like that experience kind of at least opened got your attention on the door.
It did, because I knew that there were parts of myself that like I had these like stuck energies, but I didn't know how to address them.
Yeah.
Because they felt like second nature. They felt like my personality. But there was a part of me that like, but that's not really me. But I can't do anything about it.
Right, that's not you because you ain't let him out yet. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's
and
awesome.
So that started that process of undoing some of that.
Sweet.
Yeah.
And so how was your ayahuasca trip?
Oh, that was really amazing. So we had this really beautiful, unique opportunity to sit with the Huni Queen, who are an indigenous peoples from Brazil.
Oh, wow. And
so-
you said you were with her for this one?
Yeah.
Okay.
She invited me. She told me about it.
Awesome.
And I had been waiting for a while. I knew I wanted to do ayahuasca, but I didn't. I wanted to wait until it felt right. And so she told me about this opportunity where they. So the chief of his tribe, his name is Chana Ikakuru, and his wife Batani. They travel to the U.S. about once a year. And primarily, they've been doing their ceremonies in California and I think Hawaii. I'm not sure if that's new, but
Yeah.
they definitely do a lot in California.
This year was the first time it was in Washington.
Yeah, this was the first time here.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah.
Oh, this was just recently?
Yeah, this was a month ago.
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
Out,
So it's
out in the
fresh.
desert.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and so so they come through and they hold ceremony for people to share their culture and to share the way that they do
ceremony.
ayahuasca and hold ceremony, and they also all the proceeds go to their tribe, so it goes back home.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Oh,
and so when she
that's
told me
cool.
all of that, I was like, that's my kind of ceremony. I
I'm
want to
in.
go. I'm in.
Sweet.
And that experience was really it was really beautiful. There was a lot of like physical purging, which is totally normal. Want to normalize that? It's totally normal part of the process.
I didn't want to get invasive,
Yeah.
but I was going to ask, yeah.
Yeah, it's really normal, and it can even happen on mushrooms or ketamine. Even a lot of people
Yeah.
purge on ketamine.
I've experienced the mushroom purge before.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was my first night. Was a lot of purging and some emotional cleansing, but primarily I was still me. I didn't really not leave my ego. My ego was still attached. But the second night we were able to go deeper, and the force was stronger. Part of that was because the first night we were outside and it was really cold. So I think it was even cold. It was so cold. It was like 30-something degrees and the wind was blowing.
Setting.
I was in a sleeping bag and I had
It
like
plays
this hot
its
hands
role.
blanket, a hot hands blanket, and that still wasn't enough. So it was really cold. And so even Chana was like, "Can we please do it inside Saturday night?" So we all squeezed into, like, you see how this shape, the room is like an L.
Yeah.
We kind of squeezed into an L-shaped living room, dining room situation.
Nice.
And we had ceremony that night, and for me, I reached levels of bliss and joy that just felt so rejuvenating, and like I want everyone to have an opportunity to have that kind of experience in their life, whether it comes through plant medicine or it comes through yoga or it comes through, I don't know, the birth of their first child,
Right.
but like to have access to that is a really beautiful thing, and I think that's a big reason why I'm doing what I'm doing.
That's awesome. If someone was interested in like experience something like that, how would they go about reaching out to those people and setting something like that
It's
up?
a lot of.
I would imagine.
knowing people.
I would
you gotta,
imagine
like,
it's not
Yeah.
as easy as just showing up to the party.
No, you gotta.
No.
Usually, how these work, you have to know someone.
Right,
you know
that's
what
what I
mean,
would
to
figure.
be referred. Yeah.
I want to say for folks who are watching, please don't email us asking us.
Yeah.
We can't do that just yet. We need to change the laws first. But what I would recommend is to join psychedelic societies and make those connections with people.
Actually, my church is a legal church.
There you go.
Legal or
It's legal.
ill?
Legal.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting. How does that work?
Well, Jonathan Goldman, he's, is in Ashland, right? And he was practicing the Santo Daime, and he brought it here, and so long story short, he's the one who brought the case to the
Supreme Court. Yeah.
and he won. So the Santo Daime is a legal church, so we can bring
Under
our sacrament.
like religious practices.
You're right, yeah. And so we practice under that.
That's awesome.
So yeah.
Sweet. Well, cool. Maybe we can talk a little bit more about that. So you guys played a part in advocating for decriminalizing mushrooms and other psychedelics
Yep.
in Seattle.
Yep.
Yeah.
Can you guys talk a little bit about what that process was like? Maybe some of the people who were a help, and maybe some people who were a hindrance, and what did that look like? How was that experience?
Yeah. Well, I can say the group, Decriminalize Seattle, has been around for about 2+ years.
Okay.
Like I said, I joined in late July of 2020, so I wasn't here for the very, very beginnings. But what I've gathered about how it started was a number of people who were already part of the psychedelic community in Seattle kind of came together. I think it was about 6 or 7. And they met a few times in 2019. And then in 2020, another person who is no longer part of the group started leading the group. And she led the group for about a year and some change. And she did a lot. She did a lot to make it an entity. I joined under her leadership at that time. And she's full of ideas. I mean, she really I think she has a good heart. But I also kind of have seen, over the past year and some change that, in advocacy work in general, all kinds of people are attracted, but particularly I find people who have either had like really profound changes in their life or really deep wounding get drawn to advocacy work.
Okay.
And so sometimes like the way that you orient to conflict, the way that you orient to like managing when you're having a difficult time with an outcome, whatever, when it comes to leadership, that can be problematic. And so there was some, basically, I don't want to really go into it, but there was some problems with leadership, and that is why things transitioned in March. And our organizations, there were 2 groups essentially, and we split ways. So Decriminalize Seattle split ways with that person.
Okay.
And continued on the advocacy side of things.
Okay.
So I want to say that there's been a lot of people who have come to the table to help support the mission.
Awesome.
Lots of volunteers who have come through, and people from everyone from like helping us to connect with like lawyers or with graphic designers or
council members,
people to like collect not signatures, but get people on our newsletter, go to farmers markets, like totally grassroots effort.
Right.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Did you guys, so explain to me exactly, so I was doing a little bit of research, and so there was no legislation. You guys didn't help pass any legislation, correct?
Right.
The SPD, you got them to verbally confirm that it is at the lowest level of enforcement. Am I getting all that correct?
You got it right.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Got it
right.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So, I just had a brain fart. I forgot what I was going to say. So, what was like I said, I'm a little bit interested in at least the inner workings of like politics and stuff like that. So, what is it like were you guys present for any of the vote? Is that what you guys do? You guys put up some words to like council members and they put it up for a vote?
Oh, yeah, I can tell you what that was like.
Yes, please.
All right, so
I'm floundering over here.
It's okay. So basically, for folks who are interested in doing this wherever they live, basically you need to find someone on council who is willing to like champion your cause. And so some of the things that we learned along the way, our group, when I say we, I mean the group, met with Councilmember Herbold in like May of 2020, I want to say. And she basically said, come back when you have a movement, because at that time it was basically just the whatever number of people that were volunteering.
Yeah.
They didn't have
organization.
They didn't have organization to the point where they could prove that like they've talked to other constituents. They have support. Like this is the thing in Seattle. And so, like I said, things were coming together slowly, very slowly. And so, fast forward almost a year later, a second meeting was had with a different council member, so this time Councilmember Lewis, and he expressed interest, but he didn't follow up again until like almost May.
Oh, okay.
So like 5 months after that meeting in January. So he's like, yeah, I'm interested, but they had all the things going on with the budget and everything with defund SPD, so they were super busy.
Yeah. They had a busy summer.
They got a full plate. They had a really busy summer and winter and continues.
Another summer, yeah.
But he did circle back to us in May. And so what happened between January and May is, so I attended two things happened. I remember thinking about like, shouldn't we be writing letters or shouldn't we be doing like the boring work? But the thing that shows them that people are like knocking at your door.
Yeah. The nitty gritty.
The nitty gritty stuff. Yeah. So I attended a meeting when I was on the East Coast. I usually go in the winter to the East Coast. I was out there and I attended one meeting with a group called Bay Staters for Natural Medicine. And the guy who leads that, his name's James Davis, and he's a really excellent organizer. Okay. And so he showed an action hour, like he led an action hour, I should say, about how to do letter writing. And so I was like, well, that's great, letter writing. But what if we apply that same concept to public comment.
Okay.
So I started organizing people to just call at the Public Safety and Human Services public comment every 2 weeks. So even if we had 4 or 5 people show up, it didn't matter the numbers. It was just like we were consistently showing up. Didn't matter what's on the agenda. We're always talking about psychedelics and decriminalizing.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
So there's always a little bird tweeting in
There's always a little bird tweeting. And what's important about that is, they meet at like 9:30 in the morning. So like, who has time to take off of work to do that?
I'm pretty busy at 9:30 in the morning usually.
Yeah. So like, if you can prove that, like, if you show 5 or 10 people show up for this, that might be a small number, but that means a lot of people care about it.
Right.
Yeah.
Especially, because I can tell you what, I don't think I've ever made one of those phone calls. So I would imagine if you were to pool a large amount of people,
right,
only so many people are calling in.
Correct. Yeah. So. I think they know that when people call into things, that means it's important to them. And so we did that for months.
Awesome. Okay.
To the point where other people on our team were kind of getting bored with it. But that's a lot of the important work that we did, was just continuing to show up. We also went to different legislative districts, so Democratic legislative districts, which are basically, they're like meetings that people kind of like us, right? Like, we care a lot about psychedelics, where there's Democrats who come together and they're like, let's talk about policy. What are we going to support this year?
Right.
What are the things we're going to endorse? Like, they come together and do that.
What does the support of decriminalizing, do you guys have any like statistics on hands? Like, what is the support of decriminalizing psychedelics?
It depends. So polling is how people figure out all that stuff.
Again, that's the same people who are calling in, and I've never taken a poll, so take poll numbers for what they're worth. But I have to imagine, on the flip side, what harm is it causing?
Well, very little.
Okay.
Yeah, the data shows.
That's kind of what I would figure.
I wish I had a graph I could show you right now, but basically it's like alcohol.
We got a good
is up
producer.
here.
If you know where to look, he'll find it.
Yeah. I was like, pull up. Where's my phone? It's over there.
Maybe afterwards we can.
Yeah.
We can do it later.
If you got it, we can add it to the show notes or something for sure.
But basically, you have alcohol way up here with like harm to people, harm to society, and harm to self, right? And then you have psilocybin, LSD, MDMA at the end, at the very bottom.
Yes. Oh, I've seen that.
You've seen that, okay?
Yeah. Okay. That's absolutely. We'll add that in there. Yeah. It's like, what is it like? Out of 100 people, how they question people, and it was like, out of 100 people, these people have done these drugs. How many people have encountered harm in their life, whether like to their self or like to people around them? And it was like 70 out of 100 for alcohol, and like the list goes all the way down, progressively gets lower, and at the very bottom is like psychedelics, mushroom, and it was like 4 or 5 people, and it was just like mental issues, which is a legitimate concern if you are someone who maybe has, and I'm no doctor, so don't take my word for it, but if you have any mental issues, maybe consult a doctor before
like
trying psychedelics. Yes. Or anything.
Yeah.
But
we need more research. I want to put it out there that when we say like for folks who have like mental health issues or whatnot, maybe like more so than just like depression, right?
Right.
To really consult a doctor. I think that's prudent advice, because these
that's
are
good. Yeah.
Yeah, they're really powerful substances, and they can alter your perception. And I've listened to anecdotes of people who do have like schizoaffective disorder, where they've had positive experiences on psychedelics, and they've had really scary ones that where they feel like they're in a psychosis.
Right.
So that's where it's just like, do your research, consult with an expert.
That's the bad trip everyone's worried about, right?
Yeah, and like bad trips are also part of the risks,
Yeah.
And being like overwhelmed by an experience you just weren't ready for.
It is a mind-altering experience. Yeah.
I mean, you'll come back to baseline, but your experience, what you take away from that could be, it could radically shift in your perception to the point where you're just like, wow, I was not prepared for that,
Very much so.
Yeah.
So I have to imagine the only people who are still disagreeing with like legalizing psychedelics is probably like the boomers or something like that. I have to imagine that support's going down every year.
Which is ironic given the name, but
yeah.
Awesome. So what's next on the agenda? Are you guys in favor of like decriminalizing all drugs, or do you have a line? Like, what do you guys stand? And maybe that's personal beliefs, or if you guys have it's not a company, is it? I guess.
No, we're starting a nonprofit.
Okay.
Yeah.
A group. If you guys have a group-wide mentality, I don't know. But do you guys have an agenda set up for what's coming up?
Yeah. So there's a few points there. So, and on the topic of decriminalizing all drugs, we do support that.
Okay.
We do support that, but there's varying opinions on like what that looks like.
I tend to agree with that with a little bit of gray space. Yeah.
So like when it comes to do we want people to be arrested for substance possession? No.
No.
Across the board, definitely not.
Absolutely not.
But with that said, there's been a lot of discussion about like psychedelic exceptionalism, and basically what that means is people saying, well, my drugs, the drugs that I do are good, and they're better than your drugs.
Right.
Basically, it's kind of a superiority complex, And when that gets entered into a space, just like any kind of supremacy complex, it creates a differential, it creates a power imbalance, and you're putting someone or oppressing someone. So personally, I don't believe that people should be looking at drugs as good or bad. It's about risks, and it's about benefits.
Right.
Some drugs have really different risks, like for example psilocybin, there's no known toxic dose.
Right.
So like
you're not gonna OD.
Right, you're not gonna OD. Right. But you might, like we said, we might have a really scary or challenging experience, and so that could be a risk for someone. But that doesn't mean that psilocybin is necessarily better, than another drug.
Right.
It's different. You're comparing apples to oranges. So I think part of the work that the psychedelic community can do is to be supportive of protecting people who use drugs of all kinds. Because we, ultimately, at least what I personally believe is, no matter what you're seeing on the outside, I think people do things because they're trying to help themselves, and they're doing it the best way that they know how. But sometimes, it ends up getting them in a worse situation than they were.
Right. Everybody's got their coping mechanism.
Yeah.
I mean, what is that's where I find it so arbitrary with I like that. What did you call it? The
Psychedelic exceptionalism?
That one.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah.
Because, what's the difference between coming home and having a drink? Liquor kills people all the time. You can go and buy that at the store. You can go and buy cigarettes at the store, and those kill 500,000 people every year. But, if we're going to play these arbitrary rules, let's just throw them all out the window. Because, and then that's where we find, the little gray space. I don't even really know what my gray space is, but I know there is a little bit there. But, yeah, okay, cool. So, is that what you guys are pushing for in Seattle then?
So in Seattle, next steps are we're pushing for an ordinance next, and Councilmember Lewis was supportive of doing that when they passed the resolution. So we're pushing for an ordinance next because basically the resolution makes it sort of like policy, but not law. So the ordinance would make it law.
Resolution, that was the word. Okay,
yeah,
beautiful.
Yeah.
I know. It was it was a resolution from the SPD. Okay.
The other thing is our group of volunteers, like I said, we're starting a nonprofit, and it's going to be called the Psychedelic Medicine Alliance, and this is going to be a statewide
awesome.
push for decriminalization in Washington.
Congratulations,
Thank
guys.
you.
That's
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah,
That's
we met
big
with
news.
some lawyers today to help us incorporate and everything.
Sweet. Awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, sweet. Is there any other maybe pressing matter? I thought we maybe save a little more, because I have to be honest, I got introduced to psychedelics at a little younger age, so my usage was much more recreational than it was, on a mission. So I thought we'd save some of those questions for the end. But was there anything else pressing you guys wanted to get
I think
on the table?
I think if we could talk a little bit about the Affinity Farms,
Please.
that would be cool.
Oh.
Yeah, so a little bit more
Affinity
about
Garden.
the bigger Affinity
Big
Gardens,
gardens, yeah.
bigger picture vision. I think one of the things I wanted to touch on was when we talk about decriminalizing at the state level, this is just a first step. And we basically, what we're hoping to do is to just increase people's awareness and create safer access for folks. And then from there, legalization or whatever that really looks like is more of a long-term future kind of thing.
Okay.
But we're hopeful that in the process of decriminalizing that we can help people not only, decide whether or not psychedelics is something that they want to look into more, have access to, objective information about it, and also create equitable access to it. So when I think about the future, I'm a little bit worried that psychedelics will just be kind of shoved into the same model that regulatory model that cannabis was shoved into.
Yeah.
Which basically, you see the same kind of disparities in access to the legal market that you see everywhere
You're
else.
talking about once it becomes legalized?
Yeah, once it becomes legalized, you see
and
this
once
kind
the
of
corporations kind of do their thing with it.
Yeah, so like for example, having access to starting a legal cannabis business, for example, when you look in Washington State, it's less than like 1% are owned by Black people.
Yeah.
You know,
to be honest, do you guys remember when that Sean Kemp dispensary opened in Seattle?
and it said owned by Black owned.
Yeah. That was the first Black owned dispensary in Washington State. That blew my mind because.
And
for obvious reasons, what the fuck?
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
And even then, he didn't have majority ownership of the company.
I know. It was like 5% or something.
Yeah.
They just put his name on it.
Right. So people were talking about that too.
Yeah, that's rough. Cannabis industry is an ugly beast, man.
Yeah,
most
man.
industries are, but
yeah, so messed up. People are still in jail today on marijuana possession.
Yes,
you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just really messed up. And then,
you can walk into a cookie. What was that? You guys see that meme that went around? You can walk into the cookie store, and when the weed shop looks like the Apple store, we gotta let some people go. We gotta let some people free. Someone said that. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
If you ever seen like a cookie store or something, you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, when I was growing up back in the 90s, I would just see like my friend, go to jail and over, weed possession or selling weed and stuff like this. And now, majority, we're not having access to that business, but we're penalized greatly for it. Like families were ripped apart. And so getting back to the Affinity Gardens is a nonprofit that I'm working on to have some land where we can hold ceremonies.
Oh, awesome.
For affinity groups, people of color, transgender, people, queer, gay, so people can have a safe place to do their work, and yeah, that's kind of like my mission and what I'm working on is having some land to do that and have a safe space, a beautiful place. And so we can develop community around medicine.
That's awesome. I love that. Yeah. I hope that works out for you, honestly.
Yeah, okay. Come back, maybe we could talk more about it.
For sure. So, okay, awesome. Let me ask you guys this: have you guys like ever looked into any of like the medical therapy they're doing with like MDMA or ketamine or anything like that? Like the drug research area is hot right now. There's a lot going on. Do you guys stay up to date on all that? Are you guys? Have any of you guys like ever tried ketamine or?
No, I haven't. I haven't.
I think it's super interesting now that those barriers are starting to fall. That the war on drugs is starting. I'm hoping so. It sure feels like it. I'm not as tapped in politically to know if it's really coming to an end, but it feels like it. The social climate is the war on drugs should probably be over, and they're opening up a lot of lanes for research and ketamine, MDMA, psilocybin, all sorts of stuff. I don't know. I haven't met anyone who's done any of those therapies, but I did think it was interesting that they're doing ketamine experiments.
Yeah, definitely. I followed a little bit of what MAPS is doing with MDMA research for PTSD, and I have a friend who's done ketamine therapy at the Ames clinic in Seattle. So that's an accessible place for folks. And I think on Sunday I heard that Ames is starting basically a fund to help people who can't afford treatment, because ketamine's like, I think it's like $600 and something per infusion.
Oh, really?
And that's not including
that's
the intake costs, because you have to be like evaluated and therapy and whatnot, or maybe not therapy, but there's an intake process. So, that can easily cost someone $3,000 to $4,000, 3 or 4 trips essentially.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's insane.
Yeah, and that's nothing when you talk about like inpatient rehab. I was looking at a Ibogaine clinic in Mexico, $30,000 a month.
Dang.
And that's the cheaper
$1,000
end.
a day.
Yeah.
Woo. Yeah, that's
the cheaper end.
those retreats are crazy though. Those do look like an enjoyable time.
Yeah.
I don't know about $1,000 a day, but
Yeah.
okay, so I have one last question for you guys because you guys are like the closest thing to psychonaut lawyers I know. I know it's still a stone's throw away, but we're close enough. So
Okay.
I know that you can't legally sell psilocybin, right?
Right.
Anywhere in the country, correct?
Correct.
Right.
Have you seen these like 1-Up bars and all these companies that are popping up that are just selling mushroom chocolates and stuff?
Oh yeah, they're all over Instagram too.
Yeah. So is that just black market, or are those like they seem pretty official? Like I had a couple podcasts who were sponsored by 1-Up bars, which is mushroom chocolates.
They're psilocybin?
Yeah, advertise them as psilocybin. There's like 4 grams in the bar, and you can break it up into 8s. Like,
Whoa.
it's a whole thing. So I was gonna ask you guys, how the hell are they doing that?
I don't know.
I don't know. I mean,
No one has an answer
I've
for
had
me.
friends who are like they brag about taking drugs on planes. You know,
Right.
That's something that I would never do.
No, and I
No
don't
way.
condone that either.
Yeah.
No.
But they brag about it. You know, like oh yeah, I'm not gonna get caught. And they're usually like white dudes.
Right.
You know? And so I wonder who runs that company.
The podcast that's sponsored by them is like, they're like, how the fuck are they
Yeah.
doing this?
I don't know.
They pay us. We say this.
Yeah.
We eat their. Okay. So the saga
I don't know.
continues.
I've
I'll
heard
never
of
know.
2 recent busts for people with psychedelics. One in Florida and one in Oregon recently.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
What'd they get busted for? They were.
Well, the one in Oregon was a major psilocybin operation.
Oh, okay.
And the one in Florida.
Oh, so they had all the tubs and.
everything.
Oh my
Yeah.
gosh, dude! I remember. I watched this Vice episode, and they like. Did you guys ever watch that show Hamilton's Pharmacopoeia?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
That was a good one. And he met those mushroom growers, and like it was all white. Dude, it looked like a hospital room. It was all sterile and white and LED lights, and yeah, it looked pretty freaking cool. But I'm not interested in anything you have to wear like a sterilization suit
Right.
for. That's not my jam.
Yeah.
Well, okay, the saga continues. Maybe one day we'll figure out. Maybe they'll sponsor us, and we'll get to ask them. But till next time, guys, this has been Tac'd with Spencer P, Monique, and Tatiana of Decriminalize Nature,
Yeah.
Seattle.
It was a
This has been
pleasure.
an awesome show, guys.
Yeah.
Hopefully we'll have you back soon with some updates and
Yeah.
what else is new.
Yeah, we'd love
great.
that. Thank you.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks for coming.
Yeah, thanks for the opportunity.
Sweet. All right. That's a wrap.